Welcome to the Comic Binge. So I'm your host, Paul Herman. I'm very excited today because we're going to return to a series of episodes that, I want to do more of. The problem is it feels like people don't want to hear about independent comic books. And I just want to just shove independent comic books down people's throats because they're awesome. And I love doing these shows. I love exploring different people's creativity. It's really important. So today we're going to be talking about a independent comic book that I truly found unique. I explained this to the writer just a few minutes ago, and I no BS was really impressed with how they presented this information and everything in the story. And today we have my new friend. I'm going to call you my friend, Natalie. New friend, Natalie. Hello.
Hello. Thank you for having me on your channel.
Absolutely. It's an honor to have you. So Natalie has written this really, really interesting independent comic book, and I can't wait to get into the details of what I was going to show it up too. Don't worry. I have my copy too, which you guys sent me. It was very nice of you. But this is called Cult Girls, and this is based off of loosely off your life and experiences, and we'll get into a little bit of that. But it's really unique. We'll get into the uniqueness, but before we get into the nitty gritty of everything, Natalie, what inspired you to write the story and tell the audience a little bit about the story, and then what inspired you to write it, and why did you choose comics? You can interject whenever you want, but yeah, go ahead and take us down that road.
Well, first of all, cults are really hot right now. So I thought Cult Girls is perfect because I'm a cult binge watcher. I watch documentaries. I read different biographies and follow them. And they're actually out there more than you think. So I thought this might be like an interesting topic for just awareness, because some of the psychology can work over into different things. And we're moving into more of a time where, women can do pretty much anything that a man can do. And so I've had my own journey of experiencing the world. And I've had a lot of friends that left this religion. And I started seeing patterns in other religions of people that left. And I thought this would just be a really good topic that I knew. And I like comedy, and we make jokes about it.
Right on. So can we go through your experience a little bit as, again, what kind of brought you to write this exactly? Grew up with different religions and everything like that.
Well, I noticed as time went by, I was starting to, I'm in like groups, and I have friends that have left it. And as time went, we started to be more humorous, and getting together and talking about our past experiences and comparing notes was really healing to leaving something like this, because it is a severe loss when you have, for those that are not aware, religions like Jehovah's Witness, they do shun people that leave or are not in the same agreement with their theories. So anyways, that's why I came out with the book. And I thought that I also, with a lot of cult survivors, the stories are really sad and depressing, and those are important too. But I figured this would be better because it's not always sad. Life is a journey, and I've seen that people have done a lot with their life, and that there's a wonderful world to explore, and we can learn a lot from the past. And so I'm trying to kind of like change that, and even just coming out and talking about the book, it's just more of awareness to try to be a better parent and to learn from our mistakes, and hopefully we're all like evolving as humans.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I'd be remiss to add on my friend Chris here. I forgot he really wanted to be on the show, so I have one moment here. I'm gonna bring him on. I hope that doesn't alarm you or anything. This is Chris Clow. Mr. Chris, hello.
Don't wish to alarm you.
Well, you are alarming. Let's be real. You are alarming.
Yeah, true.
But anyway, Chris, do you have anything you wanted to Chris, Natalie, Chris, do you want to add anything to what we were talking about, Chris, of the story?
Natalie, I was wondering if you could define a term for me that you use a lot in the book. And I feel like there were enough context clues that I could probably put things together just fine. But you use the word worldly a lot.
Oh yeah.
And I wasn't totally sure. So I was just wondering if that's a concept you could explain.
It's a bad term to a Jehovah's Witness. That means that you're a woman or a man of the world and you're going off into the snare. So, but when you're out, that's a good term. So it's more that you're learning things and learning about people. So yeah, those are kind of probably, and that's what the book goes into, is a little bit of the culture of being raised as Jehovah's Witness. And the ones that have read it, they're like, wow, it's dead on. Like the money culture in there. Now, I don't know if other religions are like that, but the money was kind of a strange thing growing up as Jehovah's Witness, because it's like a bad thing to be successful or to desire nice things. And so it carried over into people's work habits as well.
Sure. Yeah. No, I mean, it sounds like it was a rather oppressive environment. I think that comes across very clearly in the work. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Paul.
No. You're good. It's funny because, you know, one thing there were so many terms in the book when I was reading it, Natalie, that again, because I, for those who don't know, I went to a Bible school for 2 years, and I have a lot of deep connections with Christianity religion. It was a Lutheran school, and if those who don't know, you have Catholicism, right, and then you have Lutherans broke off from Catholicism to form Christianity. And Lutheran, but the reason I say all that is because Lutherans are like a very conservative version of Christianity. So it's like, so I went to a school where they didn't want drums to be in their music.
Oh, that's interesting. Oh, because it's like rock, which modern
use a lot. Exactly. So the terms like worldly, like what Chris brought up, were totally things I heard from like back in my day too.
That relate to certain things in the book because their parents might have been a little more like intense about it. But I don't want to come down on other religions, because a lot of religions, a lot of the Christian, I found, like from studying cults, they do a lot for the community. Like they put education on, they're doing stuff for the homeless, they're giving their kids some morals. So I think those are all fine things. The thing is when there's a cult or one of these type of, it could come in the form of a business or a relationship, is when it's destructive into your family, or it's like holding you back, or when you try to leave. Something should be like an opinion. Because I've asked some other people, when they go to church, they're able to like say an opinion or like something about the scriptures, but you can't do that in these types of environment. You're actually turned in, and anybody can report you or come up with a witness, and then your whole years of putting in this time to like build up into this religion could be torn down in a second. So, and then also they make it so that your work environment is generally with these people. And, and I'm pro education too. I think that women, I think that they're capable of doing a lot more than what's, these environments of, sadly, most of my friends did not graduate high school. They got like tests to exit, and most of them that were in my group were homeschooled.
Wow.
Yeah.
So there was
it's really strong on the women.
And that was one thing that I, growing up I didn't grow up in it necessarily. I'm a very complex story of how this, and that's a whole different podcast and everything. But one thing that but at least when I became when I was a young adult, before I became a man, but before I was out in the world, if you will, and learning, I didn't realize how much, again, even in where I was, looked down on women, and how, the Bible, again, we grew up to be, the Bible would say like, men is, or women is lesser than man for whatever reason, because of this reason, the Old Testament, what have you. And again, I know like we have very similar backgrounds in that, and that's, they basically say like men are the strength of the pillars, and women are the servants,
they have
right?
their own set of issues sometimes in these too.
Right. Yeah. But what's interesting is that as I've gotten older, I've just realized that like the Bible, again, in my opinion, the Bible it's a certain time frame of life, right? Like doesn't this be God is I don't think in my opinion was ever like women can't be leaders. It's back then that's what it was, right?
Yeah.
And me like it's never it was interesting because women were there or men were the the be all end all and reading your book it definitely all those things were there and it's just like it's like I just don't understand why women would ever want to be a part of that.
Yeah, that's why a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses say don't want to talk about it. It's very embarrassing. And so everything in this book is like the things, they're knocking on your door and they're at your grocery store. And, some of these things I think it's important for people to know. A lot of them are kind of in denial, like women wear head coverings. Now, people make comments about when they see somebody at the bank wearing one from, maybe a different culture, but Jehovah's Witnesses do it too. And they don't talk about it and they don't want to wear it. Nobody I knew was purposely wearing, they would actually maneuver situations so that they wouldn't have to wear it. And that's just like a little tiny fragment, but this isn't something they exactly talk about. Also that the man is the boss. They don't teach. If your husband tells you, what to wear or that you can go to school or something, that's word and that's the culture. And if you went against that, your friends are behaving this way too. And even the men, they have pressures too. Like if their wife's behaving a certain way or becoming too educated, there's a peer pressure on them. But when you're growing up in it, you don't really see it as much. So that's why the book, I thought this would be a really good tool for women to kind of see like, oh, wow, this girl kind of noticed that too. And it just sort of like makes you think, or, maybe, I find that a lot of people have a relative or they might be dating somebody that was one. So there's a lot of Jehovah's Witness affiliated people out there that, they're not talking about it, but it may kind of, it may sort of like affect who they are today. And so people have been given these as gifts because they're like, I'm going to give this to my boyfriend. He'll understand now.
Well, I don't, I feel a little bit like coming into the show late, especially. I don't want you to feel like you're being interrogated by elders, right? Because you got two men that are just like.
No, first of all, you let me talk. So.
Which, by the way, now
the elders.
That was pretty cool. Alex has already mentioned, choosing comics, share information like this is really, really cool. So you're getting kudos. This is good.
Oh, thank you. Thanks.
But one of the things that I'm curious about, because I'm far from a religious scholar, like I was also raised Lutheran and confirmed in the Lutheran Church, the Missouri Synod of the Lutheran Church, which is actually one of the more conservative subsects of the Lutheran Church, at least I was led to believe. But I know that like the discussion that takes place around the Jehovah's Witness religion, it seems like in comparison with other, I guess I'll say alternative forms of Christianity, it seems like it might have a little more legitimacy with some people. And you make very clear that in the book, look, it follows a lot of the standard checked boxes of cults. And so I'm curious about what your perspective is on the fact that Jehovah's Witnesses are seen as, or the movement is seen as maybe more legitimate, but that clearly doesn't jive with your experience. So what do you make of
they don't progress as a religion. Now other religions do. I have to say probably the ones that you're in, I think they probably do. This is stuck like in the 1950s.
Formerly from my end. Yeah.
And they're not like they're not accepting like the blood transfusion. That's modern medicine. So some of the things they're not really progressing with the times. And I would say that this is a radical religion. And for instance, they do disfellowship children and they make them, there's some cases going on, the Monica Hines versus Watchtower. There was a child being trafficked at the headquarters. And so I think it would be a really good movie afterwards about that. But she was working. There are a lot of kids, they're doing ministry. They're volunteering on construction projects. They're signing contracts of full-time ministry. They're getting baptized and they're making an agreement in front of elders. And then if they get disfellowshipped, they could literally be at school and the kids are shunning them and they're not allowed to have worldly friends. So this creates a mental health problem because their brains aren't equipped to handle this very heavy. Everybody who has been in that experience, it's a very emotional, heavy thing. And other religions have had the shunning and excommunication, but this one's really severe. And they are kind of like, if you ask them about it, sometimes they'll say, oh, we don't do it, but they're playing a word game. They just say, they don't use the word disfellowshipping because there was like a lawsuit about that. So they just say their name is removed, like they volunteered it. And it's not voluntary. I didn't volunteer to get removed. And that's, covered in the book. And they hunt you down like a wild animal too. It's like, you're just doing your thing. You can't just like walk away. If they want you out, they can really like do some damage.
So Chris, when you, I don't know if, again, I'm sorry I didn't give you the link earlier. My question is, because I was telling her before the show and obviously when we're talking, that I loved how she weaved this a lot of information. Like, because again, you learned a lot. It sounds like. I thought it was really unique, and as far as bringing the information into the narrative of a story very seamlessly. I felt it was almost like a perfect balance. And seriously, I was curious.
I
Have
want
you?
it to be educational because
Oh, yeah.
you can't exactly ask them. It's like, you want to be nosy. This is with a lot of things. That's why people love documentaries. You want to kind of be nosy. And I love to watch something, or I read a lot of graphic novels where you're also like learning about something and somebody researched something that makes it really unique. And then plus it's like a California story. Somebody commented about that, I'm a California girl. So with the artist, I was like, I want this to come across. I'm just writing about what I know. And I wanted to have that flavor on top of it so that like
No, it totally nails it.
people would be curious what it's like. And so also the diversity. In California, we got, a lot of Hispanics, and a lot of Hispanics are Jehovah's Witnesses. So I think I got that in there too. So I appreciate, yeah.
No, but Chris, I was going to ask you, have you read a comic like that before? Because I haven't. I've not granted, like my bread and butter is superhero stuff, so I'm not like going to sit here and be like, I've read so many artsy fartsy comics that I know everything. Not like that. I've tried to read more. My wife is way more well versed in like more artsier and more. I'd say dynamically interesting stories. But Chris, have you read something like this? Because I have not personally.
Okay.
A couple of indie books that have kind of tried to do this, but the experiences I don't think were as sharply defined, frankly.
Okay.
I mean, my interactions with other people who have identified as Jehovah's Witnesses in the past, like when I was in elementary school, we had a girl who was from a Jehovah's Witness family, and I didn't realize it until I came home one day and I was talking to my dad, and we stood up for the Pledge of Allegiance, something that we did at the beginning of every day. But she did not join us. She stood, but she did not actually participate. And I just remember thinking, oh, that's interesting. And then I've heard like my mom, who worked as a nurse in an emergency room, actually directly dealt with the blood transfusion issue. A Jehovah's Witness woman who was in a car accident needed a blood transfusion to survive, and the religious leaders told her she couldn't have it, and she ended up passing away. So the experience, the very vague interactions that I've had kind of coalesced while reading this book, and it gave some additional clarity to some of those prior instances. But honestly, too, one of the things that I was curious about, just because it sounds like this was a part of your life for so long.
Yeah.
What was the actual process like for you to come to terms with the idea that maybe this isn't for me and maybe this is holding me down?
I think many that leave, it's like a tug of war. I knew when I was young, as a teenager, I wanted to leave, but I kept coming back because the family couple, there's like layers of it. A lot of it's the family pressure, and you literally believe in this Armageddon that's been drilled into your head, and it's coming around the corner. But when you start to, and they're not until you read, you're not allowed to read other people's material. You can read like a comic book or something if it's like about Spider-Man, but you can't read other religions, information. They're against higher education. And they don't like you really studying psychology. They won't let you see they advise against seeing psychologists and stuff if you have mental health, because they said they could get in your head. So there's layers. And so the way to really, when somebody leaves, I do tell them, I'm like, you got to start researching, like go back to the Bible, look at the history of Jehovah's Witnesses, study cult psychology. There's a guy, Stephen Haseen, he's a PhD, and he actually has saved some he's been hired to save some Scientologists and some Jehovah's Witnesses. And he breaks it down. What check marks is this happening? And then uses good examples, like the military kind of uses cult psychology, but the difference is when you try to leave, you're actually maybe walking away with some skills, and they're not trying to destroy you. So
yeah,
it is important to know these things.
Sure. That was actually one of the things that I found really surprising when reading the book, was that you describe just how a lot of these people they have a homeschool education that might be equivalent of a high school diploma, maybe, but
yeah,
that's
at best,
not
yeah.
right. Yeah. So,
and they work in family businesses, tend to, because they don't want to work with the world. It's kind of rare when they do, because there's a lot of meetings. It's a very rigorous routine that sucks on you, and there's always expectations. You're never good enough, and you're constantly being told you're not good enough. Going to the gym is selfish. Going on vacation, they said you might actually, while you're on vacation, Armageddon's going to come, and these vacations can lure you away. So it's like everything's bad. They don't encourage kids aren't allowed to do extracurricular activities. That's a big no-no. Yeah, so they're constantly, if somebody gets a scholarship, they're doing demonstrations of that child, saying that they turn that away over serving to be like a minister or service, because that education might lead them away into the road of destruction.
The reading experience creates a very interesting dichotomy, because a lot of what transpires, particularly early on in the book, it can get to some pretty dark places. Like someone being spied on in the shower is not a pleasant thing to happen, but the style is, it can strike you as whimsical at first, but the artwork, I think, is brilliant, because
most of these things have happened. So I was like, I'm gonna put the funny stuff in.
No, hey, yeah, I mean, sure. But I mean, that's the thing, is that I think that the way that Cassandra Bolan, is that how you say it?
She's the artist.
Yeah, she has
She's
a
really
very
good.
inviting kind of style to it, and she's really good with like the emotional conveyance of the characters, I thought.
That's it too.
When you saw her, did you just like instantly know, oh yeah, this is the style?
Yeah, it was actually very hard to find artists because it's a big project. And I needed somebody that wanted to listen to women. And, it's kind of an emotional, this isn't just like, just an anyday subject. But she was willing to put the work in, and she felt strongly about women. And she lived in places like Dubai, been to Thailand and stuff. So she's seen a lot of cultures of women being oppressed. And she was a mom herself. And so, she put a lot of time into this. Each page is a conference call. She learned a lot about Jehovah's Witnesses.
Wow.
She's probably an expert now.
That's going to like the process of the actual comic itself, because that was one thing that I was, again, I'm really impressed about, because there is so much information on the page, but you guys do a great job of breaking it down where it's never giving me too much. And the way the panel lays out are, I'll go back to that one you sent me earlier that I really like. It's this one right here. And this is a great example. There's a lot going on here, but again, the way she gives the dynamics of like how like she's looking up at the lady, and then she goes eye level, it's really dynamic. And this is a small example of how great you guys have done the layouts and the storyboards and the compositions of everything. It's very unique because again, you're putting so much information on. When people are talking, you'll do like the one panel above another, and then it goes off. It's always going. And what's the word I'm looking for?
Yeah, I noticed that. Like sometimes they're upside down on a bed.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I did
It-
know her style. She was very talented artist. And then she also, after reading like comics since then, there was a lot of background detail and a lot of, I now appreciate it more. That was just kind of our conference because I wanted people to be entertained. I was like, oh, in the background, put this and that. Oh, make sure that, I wanted all the details and she put them in. But now I'm looking at other ones and I'm like, they don't have the background. It's just like blue or a desk. I have like people in the back, like doing things and stuff. So yeah, that's why it took so long. It took
and that's
3 years.
and it took 3 years.
3
Wow,
years
that
to
was
make
okay.
it,
So
yeah.
it,
Yeah, 3 years.
and I want people. I'm glad you said that because I didn't even think about asking that, and now I'm like, wow, why didn't I think of that?
Yeah.
Because one thing, I'm an active person trying to make comics, and I'm very independent. Like I'm not even trying to do what you guys do, and I'm making a beautiful, like, an honestly beautiful, unique book like this. Like this is, one of the things that I was talking to, someone about is that they asked me how long it take me to read, and I said it took me a while, and I don't mean that in a bad way. There's just so much
Read all the details,
information.
but
No, but the details, you made a great point. This is not something you read in like 10 minutes, again, like it took me about a good, like, because I'm reading it, like trying to read it and taking everything, a good half hour, 40 minutes of like me sitting down, like it's a lot of information. And you add that narrative story, I could see why it took so long, but as someone like me, for making, I want to make more comics. It's
yeah.
really interesting. You say it took you 3 years. I guess my question to you is, was that something like you would think it took 3 years, or was that
No.
surprising to you?
I thought
Okay,
it
go
was
ahead.
a year, but I saw going into it, she had to kind of be educated about it. I mean, I did the script. I did the notebook a couple times. Like, I think people didn't believe that I actually like sketched something. So I'm glad I saved it. And they were like, whoa, my friends are like, what? Why? I said, I did try to tell you. They just didn't know the process of a comic. And then I'm like, oh, now. And then somebody also asked a question. I said, no, there's like a 100-page script. I got artists and straight. It's like writing a movie script because you kind of would forget. So it's like, and even after like a year or two, I forgot some of the stuff. Now I probably would have added some things different now, which is funny, but I was like, oh wow, I forgot about that. And then I'm chuckling over my own stuff.
That's awesome.
So it's important, if you are a creator, write the stuff down because they'll leave you.
No, yeah, and that's what I've been doing more and more because I have a pretty good memory, or I have a very selective memory, as my wife would call it, and I would agree with that too because I do remember some things, but my mind will be triggered by a certain. Like, oh yeah, that thing. I got put. Now I'm like, no, like you said, I got to write it down because I don't want
Yeah,
to ever
write it
leave
down.
me. Yeah, write it down. So here's my next question, and Chris, you can interject in it whenever you want to, man. When you sat down to write your script, like what prepared you to do that? Because again, when I first started doing it, I was like, okay, I started, I kind of knew an idea of how to do it, but I went and bought like certain comic, like, not professional books, but like, people say, this is how you write comics, how I
Yeah,
write
I did
comics.
that too. Yeah, I
Okay.
did that
Okay.
too. And then I just tried to think of like if it was a movie set,
Mhm.
because there really was a movie that kind of inspired this a little bit. I
What's a
watched
movie?
a movie called, it was done by a famous director. It's supposed to be a comedy, but people that weren't Jehovah's Witnesses probably don't think, they're like, wow, this is really depressing. But we thought it was hilarious, the people that were raised in it. It was Teenage Jesus Jerk. And I really enjoyed it. It had famous actor, came out a few years ago, famous actors, but it was more of like a young teenage perspective. But I got all the jokes because they're talking about barbecue. Because when you're young, it's all about getting married. That's like the beginning
Yeah.
of everything. And so that's all these boys. It sounded so funny, but they're like probably 14 to 16. All they want to do is just get married and have a barbecue because you're not
That
allowed to
was
have a
me.
party. So, and then
That
so
was
they kept
me.
having these visions, and it was funny. This writer, he's older now. He's probably around my age, and I did connect with him. But I thought, we need like a divorcee story, a woman, and then we just like my friends, we did like bounce idea. We're like, what would be so fun? Like we want our own thing, and so that kind of his story kind of helped us want to have a fun story because
Totally.
the book is not just me; it's four other women in the story,
Mhm.
and so I think that's important to tell the public because anybody who's been in a culture like this, there's one, not everybody fits in a box. So there's some people
Yeah.
that stayed in their, these are four girls that were born and raised in a cult, and two stayed with their husband, and I don't want to go into all the details, but not everybody fits in a box. But it shows like everybody chose a different path. Everybody had a different passion, and they were all like starting to do those things. And that's what we all should be doing with our lives, is like trying to find our path and things that make us happy and better people.
No, totally, totally. Chris, you want to add any questions on that?
No, I just the other stories. So those are based on real incidents as well.
Yeah, everybody, they're
Ooh.
inspired characters, but a lot of the events in there were of people, somebody I either knew or something, and they were woven into the story. But
So
yeah,
did,
but it is basically me leaving, and I know a lot of people that have left, and these are kind of the paths they've taken, and I think we were kind of like guinea pigs, because when you're in an environment like that, they're literally giving you pictures and stuff from the headquarters of everybody's shooting up drugs, and they say that they're miserable and all, and if you're in it, that you believe this stuff. And so when you get out, you start seeing, I'm like, wow, my friends' kids are like getting scholarships to amazing colleges, and I see smiles on their face, and they're not doing immoral behavior, and I see them with goals. Because when I was in it, I saw drugs and stuff, and being a Jehovah's Witness, and a lot of depression. And so I was like, but these kids are actually worldly, and I'm not seeing any of the things I experienced that I saw with use, very troubled use. They're, I don't want to get all the details, but so it was kind of like, I want people to know that. I want the Jehovah's Witness girls that are sitting on a fence, or if they're in something like that, to know that, and being that it's based on a true story, that there's hope at, you can still be a good person, and you can be happy, and you can still help others and get involved.
Sure.
No,
Yeah.
totally.
The other stories that you highlighted and their real subjects, how did they react and respond when they saw the book for the first time?
Yeah, that's a good one. They loved it. In fact, they were like, "Why didn't you make my hair like this?" Or, they could kind of tell which character. They see like some other people's stories in their one story, but that's when I said, I was like, if I would have known it, I would have. But I'm still glad. I mean, I had certain things I wanted people to relate to it. Just like I was like, I got to get the money scene in there. Maybe it didn't happen to me and my family, but this is a day in a life of a Jehovah's Witness and this girl. And like one of them, there was bunker videos. There's videos that are being shown to children right now, saying like that they're going to be pulled out of their home. They're going to have to bunker down. They're going to have to live at their church. And this gets very scary. This is normal stuff that these kids are doing, and they don't have like, holidays, and these kids don't really talk about it when they're at school. Like there's just a lot of like embarrassment. So I thought, this is like, it's just a good way to, people are curious.
Sure.
Yeah. So when you sat down to write your first script, Natalie, how were you intimidated at all?
You know what? I think I thought, oh, the writing will take longer. So I just started, and so much there was just so much experience and pain, being raised in it, and frustration, that it just started flooding out. So it was like I couldn't stop. And then same thing with this. I was just like, oh, I'm just going to do a doodle. It was like turning into like pages, and then ideas. And then I'm like, oh, I want to talk about this. Oh, this story. And I still have notes for like if there was another. And, so they still kind of come, and I write them down, little scenarios that are real, that I think, well, maybe it'll be like like each episode is like a 30-minute sitcom or something.
There you go. Well, that was
That's how I organized it, is each page sort of has a theme, and then has like a mini story. So I thought that's easy for people to like read a couple pages, have a couple, maybe the next day have another something. And I've heard some people say that they just read a couple pages with their coffee. So
and that's what I thought was very unique about the story. Again, how you presented it, like everyone was a self-contained, like every page, like even the first couple of pages, I'm like, they're showing me every person individually, and how they kind of gradually are growing together and change together. Again, everyone has different directions.
Yeah.
And that's where I thought was really unique, because I thought when I first sat down and was like, I'm going to read this comic book. All right, let's go. And I'm like, I'm going to read about, I'm like, oh,
read about this main girl.
I'm like, oh no, oh God, they're divorcing. Oh God, like it's just kind of, it just kind of, again, it was very surprising.
But it's fun.
It was.
Has little romance.
Yeah, yeah. It was very interesting. The end was interesting. It was very sweet though. But no, but seriously, it was such a. I was just like, oh, this is not what I was expecting, and that's what I thought was, but in a good way, in the best way, because I think there's one thing I think you highlighted in the comic medium is the fact that it's not movies and books, because you could try to do a novel, right? You could try to do more of like that kind of thing, but the graphic novel, you guys both utilize it, I thought, to the most utmost you could to the medium, and really knocked it out. And I think the fact that, and I really do think that people should give it a shot if you're looking for something different. Because like you talked about, you love documentaries, and I'm assuming you play like true crime, I love true crime too. I'll watch documentaries on true crime all day. I love documentaries, but the one thing, and there are comics out there that are documentary based-ish, if you will. Like there's lots of like music. I have a Johnny Cash graphic novel, which I haven't read, and I have it for like 15 years.
Oh, that's interesting. But I could see there'd be a fan base. Cool.
Yeah, but there's not. I haven't read it, and I don't know how. I think it's loosely, again, that whole idea of a based on a true story kind of a thing, and I bring it up because there needs to be more, I think, documentary style comics. And I like this idea of, like bringing that more of a different aspect in. Like it's actually based on all these real events, even if it's not verbatim, like a lot of these movies we all watch that are out there or based on true stories. But I like that idea. There needs to be, I think, ushers in at least to me, the idea of having more comics like that. So with that, a question for you, it sounds like you have other ideas, or maybe continuing the story of cult girls, excuse me. But do you have any ideas besides maybe this or anything else besides cult girls that you would want to do for the comic book medium?
Oh, I've had lots of ideas.
I love it.
I could never be bored. Yeah, I actually have a couple ideas in talking to somebody else about, a different story, a version of maybe a male perspective. But we'll have to see how it was so much work. I got to get this going. But yeah,
Yeah, you know better than me because you've actually put it out. I put out a digital book only, or just pages. It's a lot of work, but
it was a passion project too. So I didn't expect a lot, but I was like, I want to do this for my community, because I saw, there's just a lot of we call it orphans. It was in the book, so I thought, I just want an uplifting story, and it's fun, and so I think it was nailed. The artist was really good at it. I mean, she said that she used Disney style, but I think that was appropriate because I wanted a younger down story. I was like, I don't want it to be, some graphic novels can be very adult. And I was like, I want young girls to read this so that they learn. And, and they are. Some people are like, oh, I want to buy this for my daughter or my granddaughter because her mom, somebody said, now I get to figure out my mom. She doesn't talk about her past. And that they never saw this Jehovah's Witness side. So this was a way for them to learn about their own mom, even though they were a young adult. And I thought, wow, I never would have thought of that.
That's a very interesting balance that I wanted to ask you about because, and please correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm trying to read into what your intent might be, but it seemed to me while I was reading it that there's a little bit of a warning here, but you also want it to come across as lighthearted and accessible. That seems like a very tight balance to try and find. Did you have to work directly with the illustrator to make sure it comes across in the way that you wanted it to?
Yeah, it was about being fun because most content, when people leave something like that, it's very heavy and it's very emotional. And my family was not as nice as these people in this book. But I just didn't want it to steal from the story, and I want to give people hope. And so, and that really wasn't the thing. I wanted the focus, and I did put that kind of in there. It's about the women. It's about them. And so I was like, let's make those other people they just kind of dominate. And so I was like, I want it to be about them and living their life and feeling inspired. And also, when you leave something like that, you have to have peace with their family. I have to respect their choices. They like this. And so I think that was kind of in there, is just accepting who they are and that you still love them, but you're just not going to see eye to eye. And it's still important if you're in it. I feel like there's a lot of women that leave and they feel obligated to share their children with very dysfunctional, maybe abusive people. And I'm like, your number one thing is you got to grow up and you got to protect your children. so it's like, cult awareness is very important. So yeah, there was a message in here, and that is the awareness. So whether you're in it, that's why the ladies that are in it, their husband, they didn't get a divorce, but they were navigating like their own universe and what they were going to expose, kind of control what was going on in their family. So,
because there's such a disparity in the experiences between men and women, you already said that like maybe there is a story to tell here with the male side of the equation too. What do you think would be the most stark differences? Like if that is a story that you pursued, what do you think it might look like?
A lot on the male, there's more expectation for them to be a leader. And so their behaviors of their family and stuff, there's a peer pressure. And, a lot of males are getting married young and they're probably thinking with not their long-term mind. So there's a lot of funnies that could be in the male story too. And they're trying, they're men too, and they like to do fun stuff, but they're being judged all the time. So there is like a male perspective, and there's other perspectives. Like, what if you are a leader or you work in one of like their labor camp? I mean, they're dealing with constant criticism, and so there's a story to be told. But I would have to kind of connect with a man to see his perspective. This is strong women, how we feel, and that's why other women that weren't in it, they're like, oh, I totally got this. Like my mom was like this. I had to quit the swim team because she wouldn't let me shave. And that was hard for her. So
right.
And I don't mean to take anything away from who this story is supposed to be focused on. I was just curious.
Yeah. There's a man's version out there.
In that community of people who left it behind, do you think that because the differences between men and women are so different, do you think that there might be more female leaders in this like former Jehovah's Witness community because of their experiences in comparison to men?
Sadly, it's mostly women, and this religion does not progress. So they are still wearing dresses. They never have a voice. They're not allowed to teach. The man is their boss. They could be in ministry and a 14-year-old boy is bossing around a 50-year-old woman, and it's very disrespectful. And you have to go, thank you, brother. Thank you. I'm just so dumb. Just a lot of things. They can't form, like if a woman says an opinion, it's like, wow, who does she think she is? And then it looks bad on the man. So, and they're not political. So you're not taught to be in any kind of debating thing. You just sort of shut the world off. You don't know anything about politics. So you're not really, when you leave, it's very hard for people to kind of like fight this battle. I notice in the movement of the X community, I feel like they're not as advanced as some of the others. And I think it's because of the lack of education and there is fear. And I've had it too. I mean, I was on a different channel with some ex-Jehovah's Witness men, and I didn't realize it, but I had like some things. I was like, what if they're kind of like those men in it that are I'm more comfortable outside it. And then I saw quickly they were, like me or whatever. That was one of the reasons they left. Sure. So yeah, we all have it. It's all there.
So in the community of former Jehovah's Witnesses, do you think you've been able to connect more with like visible women as opposed to men, or is it kind of even in that respect?
Yeah, I think that's very common. Yes, they do it is like a culture. Yeah, they do feel more comfortable with women because the way that you're raised, men are in the leadership. If you go with a problem and you're beaten or something, the men, you're automatically could be accused of trying to seduce that brother or of taking his time and stuff. So there is no women representation, or if you're dressed in a certain way, it does, a lot of this comes down to the females. And so, yeah, it is true.
You brought up something I thought, and we'll wrap it up here. And you've been so gracious with your time, Natalie. Thank you so much. It's been a blast.
Thank you.
One of the things that you talked about how the men have a lot of pressure. And I think that's something I think a lot of religions in general do, because again, going back to where I grew up went to Bible school, we're raised, we have to provide, right? Like we are the only ones who provide for the family. Yeah. And so I will never forget, growing up, an ex-girlfriend's like family was just like, and it was more the mom than the dad. The dad was a lot easier on me, but the mom was like, you're never going to amount to anything. You didn't go to college. You didn't do this. You didn't, all this stuff. Like you can't provide for my daughter, basically. And I'm like, it's all on me. That's weird, And so, right. And it was funny because what's awesome is the person I ended up dating after her was my wife. And I'll never forget, I had this, my wife is not religious by any means, and if anything. And I'll never forget, like, just feeling this pressure still, even though I had kind of started leaving that whole mindset away, kind of like you were talking about the pressure that men would feel.
Yeah.
I still had that. Right. And I'll never forget when I kind of knew like Morgan, my wife, was the one, was we're sitting and I was talking about like, I don't have a good job. I'm like this, I'm like, be really hard on myself.
Yeah.
And she's like,
when you're young, you don't have those things yet.
Yeah. And my wife's driving. I'll never forget. We're driving. And she's like, why is it all on you? And I just kind of, I know my wife. Yeah. And that's the thing. I was like, yeah, why is it all on me? And she's like, it's like, we're doing this together. And that's when I knew I had the right, like I found my soulmate, because I had all this built-in pressure not because of God, not because it's because of what people were teaching me.
Yeah.
And when she said that, I felt like I was elite. It was like, I felt just so much better. And I was like, man, like, you're right. Why is it all on me? And why can we, and ever since then, I just, it's amazing to me. Like you said, there is pressure on the man, and I'm not saying like, and a lot of times men love that. Like, some people are like, oh, I'm the boss, but not everyone's like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, not all the men. And I'm all about,
wife, doing certain things. 'Cause I'm watching this true documentary right now about the LDS. It's on Hulu called Under the Heaven Banner, and it does show that there's 3 brothers. It's a true story. 3 brothers. Like this is more like the heavy fundamental LDS, and one of the all the wives are very controlled. They're against education and all this. They're about having babies young, and one of them, they're like, you got to control your wife. And he's like, I like that. She wanted to be a journalist and go to college. And they're like, we don't want her around our wives, basically, because now they're starting to think they're starting to stay peace. But
right.
He was like, but why? Like, it seemed weird to him. Like, why would he want to be like that? Like, he liked that. That's what he liked about her. So I thought it was cute. I was like, oh,
no, yeah.
A lot of these faces are the same.
Yeah, no, exactly. And so I think there's your comic is so everyone, it's available on Amazon. Where else is it located or available at?
Barnes and Nobles too. And
oh, really? Oh, cool.
Yeah. It's just really new still. Yeah, it was just released like a couple months ago.
Yeah, I got it.
That's how I read it.
Thank you.
That's awesome. Yeah, and everyone, this is called Cult Girls. Go out there. Again, truly unique comic. Super, super awesome. The art is like, again, the Disney style. I didn't even pick up on that until after you said that. And I'm like, oh, I kept thinking there's something familiar about this that I couldn't quite place. And I'm like, oh.
Yeah, when she told me that, it made sense. But I did want it fun and young. So she thought she kind of picked the style a little bit.
But I think it was, I'm sorry, really quickly. It was perfect because it's so welcoming. That art is because it's familiar. It definitely has subconsciously, I think, made me like, honestly, like I was there something I kept thinking like there's something so familiar I couldn't place it. And that Disney aspect, I think, is what kind of eases me into it a little bit as like kind of welcoming. And that sounds weird. I don't know, but like that's how I took it anyway, Chris. Which sounds like you kind of same thing.
that. I like
Yeah.
hearing that.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I was alluding to before, is just like it kind of lulls you into a false sense of security before it smacks you across the face with
Yeah,
something that might be a
yeah,
little bit shocking. So
absolutely.
I thought that was
See, that's funny because I didn't. I thought this was really lighthearted, but that's like that
well,
movie, like Teenage Jesus Jerk. I was like, oh, this is so funny.
well,
I
no,
love this is so. And then other people that were not filled, they're like, this is really depressing. That child was abused, and it's like, well, I'm not really seeing what they're seeing.
well,
I was like, this is a funny
I
story.
both
I
ways,
I
right?
think there's heaviness in there. And Chris, I don't mean to interrupt really quickly, but I would say there's suppressing aspects of it for sure because it's real and it's what you experienced or people experience, and that's never good. But again, your lightheartedness is definitely evident throughout, and I think you can see in your personality. You are a very extrovert, like very positive person, and I think that goes out. I saw that in your character completely. And so that's why one thing without even meeting you, I reading this, I'm like, this will be fun. Now you tell you're very nice. You try to have fun. That's evident. And I think that your personality is definitely is shown there. And I think the positives through that is you work with your family. You're still trying to connect with your family because it's important to you. And I think it's because you are a positive person. And I think that's definitely, I think that to me is the message is your personality is saying, to everyone, listen, like you can still have your differences and still like be uplifted. You can still leave something that you may not be stoked in, but you still live your life and have fun and still connect with those people. It's there. I think it definitely is lighthearted. And I think that your personality is what shines in it. And so you did a good job of conveying your personality. So
yeah. And I mean, just in
Thanks.
terms of the stuff that slapped me across the face, like it's not
I
that
know it's funny.
it's not like it's overridingly dark or anything. Far from it. It's just like
Yeah,
I've never had to experience a lot of those kinds of things before. So in that respect, there were parts of it that were shocking to me, basically. So, I was a sheltered kid that lived in a town of 10,000 people 5 minutes from Canada. Like that's what's gonna happen.
you're
So,
crazy. Well, we do call you the Reverend. So it makes sense. Your name makes even more sense now, Chris.
a Batman reverend is a little bit different.
No, you're still the Reverend. That's still your nickname, sir. Don't even try. Don't even try to get away from it. I'm going to embed that in your brain where you start announcing yourself as the Reverend. So that's going to happen one day. Anyway, Natalie, one thing I realized, I don't think are you on any like Twitter or anything? I don't think you are, but maybe I'm wrong.
Twitter. Yeah.
What?
It's I got a Twitter and I have a website, nataliegrandauthor.com.
Okay.
So yeah, trying to think of this.
Okay. Well, what's your Twitter handle? Because the person who connected us did not tell me you had a Twitter handle. So
yeah, it's not that big, but it's just Natalie Grand. I mean, I think it'll say at Cult Girls.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay. I will definitely
if
be.
Any, fans, I'll put like little things like I'll put this on there. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah,
fitness community loves me. they'll be very supportive of this. They love that because there's some older authors, a lot of authors and stuff. They all bring something and we support each other. It's actually a very loving community,
cool.
And so they're really happy that there's like a young fun story. And many of them like, I think that's wonderful. It's a graphic novel because it'll get in. Some people don't like to read books, and so
I don't like to read books.
Kind of like pull them in with the comics. They were really happy.
No, and that's the thing I think with comics is I think, I'm not a big prose person. And part of it is I have I have an eye issue and I also have like ADHD. So I'm like, it's up against me to read books. Comics since I was a beginning have always been my savior for reading. And I just love the medium in general. So yeah, I think it was a brilliant, again, really unique way of telling a story. And I really hope there's other stories you bring out, whether it be Cult Girls or other stories. I think you definitely have a knack for understanding. And I think, again, unique voice. And I think that you should definitely, I will encourage anyone, much less someone who's already done awesome work, to keep creating. So please keep creating more comics specifically. Okay. So more comic books, please, Natalie. All right. So, no, for sure. Chris, before we wrap up, do you want to add anything else before we head out?
No. I just thank you for making the time to speak to us.
Well, thank you. Thanks for I love talking about this stuff. So.
No, for sure.
It's great to get your lived perspective, because I think that's the important and key component. I guess the only other question that I have for you is that do you make yourself available to people who are like actively trying to leave
Oh
this
yeah.
behind?
I've had crazy stories, like really good. I was actually overwhelmed with the support, and people will tell me things. I've had people that are Jehovah's Witness girls already read it that are abused, and they
Wow.
still believe in it. And I'm not trying to get them to leave, but they appreciate the story because it's a long journey. And so if they can find a little laughter, or like a friend, I thought that made me feel happy. Or like people buy it for a gift, like one was their roommate was a gay male, or their boyfriend, and they bought it for him because they knew like he was hurting. And this is the only graphic novel for any of these communities. And so even the ex-Mormon ladies, they loved it. They told me what they appreciated about the story, and they were like, we wish you could do one for us.
Oh man,
So, yeah, so
that's
they're really
an honor.
for it.
No, for sure, for sure. Well, again, hopefully we'll get you back on and get you for a next project you have. Hopefully it doesn't take 3 years and get it. You can bang it out and
Yeah.
we can talk about it. So, again, thank you so much. And yeah, for those who are out there, you can follow us on Twitter at Binge Comic. Also, we're on Instagram. Like the video. I should always say this at the beginning, but I never do because I suck at this. So, like the video, subscribe to the channel, all that jazz, And Chris, will you please take us out, sir?
Read more comics.
All right. Thank you so much.